Welcome, everybody. I'm Josh Barone, and I'm joined by Zeb Orzi. We're both with Grant Engine, and we help deep tech companies find and win non-dilutive federal funding. Zeb and I are specifically focused on dual use programs, a significant number of which are coming out of the Department of War right now. Today's session is for U.S. companies working on counter drone technology. We're going to walk you through how the DoW priorities have shifted over time and why counter UAS has become so urgent. And that urgency was very real even before the FBI disrupted a plot to attack the UFC event at the White House. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump into it, but first maybe we'll start in the history.
And so if you're in the counter UAS space, and especially if you're an early entrant, then these are programs that you really should be aware of. You should be marking on your calendar, and hopefully building this presentation gives you an understanding of how to strategize towards it and how to think about these programs.
Right. So looking back over the last couple of years, the DoW's relationship with drones has gone through three really distinct phases. The first was it was all about hardware, and this was because of a crisis that arose when the DoW paid attention that they were using Chinese manufactured drones, a lot of them. And so the first stage was getting US manufacturers of drones to create drones that could fly faster, could carry more, and go longer. And this was with Blue UAS and Defense Innovation Unit, their whole push. And then a couple of years ago, the conversation shifted, focused on software, where the edge was now focused on the algorithm. And also that included GPS denied navigation, AI autonomy, swarm coordination. But today, the whole thing is flipped. It's not about building better drones, whether it's on hardware or software, but rather it's about stopping them.
Pushes that have happened in the past, the proper funding has followed suit. And so really, what we've been noticing is as they're trying to develop this counter UAS technology, that's where the funding is really way more programs now available than there were even a year or two years ago.
Recently, the U.S. has been watching very closely about how its allies have been dealing with the UAS threat. And there are two really different stories. One is the large UAS threat, and the other is the small UAS threat. In April 2024, Iran launched over 300 aerial threats in Israel: drones, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, fitting in that large UAS category. And the US, Israel, Jordan, and other allied nations intercepted a whopping 99% of them. So for large UAS, the playbook that they have currently proved that it works. But then look what's happening in Ukraine. You have $300 to $500 FPV drones and other small aerial drones that are taking out multi-million-dollar armored vehicles every single day. And also looking at another arena, Israel's northern border, Hezbollah has been running a persistent small drone campaign that has already forced the evacuation of entire communities and also caused real casualties by soldiers. The same era, whether large or small, UAS, but they're a completely different threat profile, where the smaller, cheaper, and the existing tools simply don't scale to it.
And the way the DoW looks at this, that is where they're using their attention. They know that whatever's happening in Lebanon will soon be something that they need to deal with. And the U.S. has always struggled with asymmetric warfare. It's always been a struggle, whether it was the jungles in Vietnam or dealing with IEDs. This has always been a struggle where these cheap, cost-effective tools and devices are the things that end up paralyzing their multi-million-dollar assets. And so this is the DoW trying to get ahead of that quickly and as effectively as possible.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, intuitively, you think with we have Patriot batteries, we have these rapid fire anti-aircraft systems on ships. We have some of the most sophisticated air defense systems in the world. But why can't we just trust why can't we just trust and use what we have?
Yeah, I think you would intuitively think that, but it's a cost mismatch. It's an economics issue. When you have a $500 drone or thousands of $500 drones that can be shot in a swarm out at U.S. Or allied infantry, no matter how amazing your one missile is or your several missiles are, that you've already lost by using that ammunition on a $500 asset. Just by them getting you to bleed dollars into their low-cost attacks, they've already swung the balance of where the battle is being fought and how the battle is being fought.
Right, because you can't sustain hundreds of thousands of dollars of missiles for every $500 drone that comes at you.
Exactly. And now we're seeing an even bigger issue, which is a lot of the defense against the low cost drone was jamming and spoofing. But now with the fiber optic drones, the way that we're really starting to see a tangible difference, lack of readiness to defend against those kinds of weapon systems.
Yeah, no, that's a real issues between the size and the expense, but also the fact that that's hard to detect them. So, what else or what has the DoW done so far to respond to this from an organization standpoint?
Yeah. So I'm glad you asked that. The DoW is actually doing a lot. The most important thing to understand is where the money's going. And that can't be highlighted without talking about the JIATF 401, which it was stood up in August of 2025 by Secretary Hegseth. And essentially it was stood up to replace the old joint CUAS office, but with something that the JCO never really had, which was acquisition authority. This now offers the DoW office that doesn't need to go through the red tape CUAS or UAS technology had to go through. And in that vein, they've committed already to CUAS technologies, and they've distributed that across several different offices. But what's, I think, most meaningful, especially to businesses in the space, is the $50 million CSO that's already stood up. It opened up in February of 26, and it will be open until 2028. And the idea is focus on kind of four main pillars of the CUAS fight, which are mobile systems, fixed site deployments, command and control for CUAS technology, and integrated layered defense, which are obviously all very general, but are key components of fighting this battle in the true environment.
I think the important thing to keep in mind is the program's open, and it's even though it's going to be open until I think 2028, to take advantage of this now because it's one of those programs where when the money dries up, it dries up. It's still pretty early. It was only dropped this past February, so if you are interested, you can definitely consider applying sooner rather than later. But let's talk about two programs that are specifically focused for small businesses.
Yeah, I think when we talk about the CSO, it's a contracting vehicle that large businesses, academia, small business can go after. But if you're a new entrant in the space and you're a small business, then you're best positioned to first focus on some of these smaller, easier to bite programs like the SIBRs and NATO Diana, which you have highlighted. And I'll just jump into that a little bit and talk about exactly what both of those programs are focused on. So the first program I wanted to talk about is the SIBR or SBIR, however you choose to call it. But this is an open topic, a purely open topic. And the idea here is give us your best, brightest, and most innovative solutions of how to advance the fight against UAS technology or low-cost UAS technology and expand our understanding of how this can be dealt with. And of course, they do highlight certain technologies that they are interested in learning more about, but that doesn't mean you need to fall into those categories. You can see that on the screen in the key technology areas, but you shouldn't feel like if your technology is not there, that means that they're not looking for it.
It's a truly an open topic, and what they're offering is for phase one, it's $200,000 for a 6-month development period, and there's also an option for additional phase one funds of up to $115,000. So it's significant, but really you're looking for that phase two, which is probably going to be $750,000 plus dollars up to 1.5 million, probably in that range. But ultimately, it's geared towards hopefully a phase three, which is going to be a contract with the Department of Navy or somewhere else across the DoW.
Yeah, and I'll say one other thing about this program, which is this is a higher funding ceiling than the Navy usually gives out. The Navy is famous for being great at holding your hand through the process and getting you to the right customers. I mean, that's only relative to the other agencies, but still important to highlight. And I think that if you can thresholds they give you, there is a site at the end of the road where there's a customer waiting for your.
That's awesome. That's a huge benefit of the program. So let's transfer into talking about the NATO program. Probably most U.S. companies are not familiar with NATO's Diana. Let's talk about the Defense Innovation Program they have.
If you're a U.S. small business space, obviously there's a gigantic customer that's waiting to be your W, but that is not the entirety of the market. And this program really gives you unparalleled access into all those other militaries and programs that allow you to expand the scope of who your customer is, what is capable from deploying this commercially. So if you're developing CUAS technology, of course, the DoW is a great purchaser for that kind of tech. But of equal importance are all the countries that are somewhat close to Russia that are watching the Ukraine right now deal with this issue and wondering how they're going to manage it. And this gives you that opportunity to get a foot in the door with those military stakeholders and have a true conversation and honest effort in deploying your technology with them. And that's also because of the nature of this program. They give you 100,000 euros to, develop your work and to take part in the program, but the program itself is really the value here.
All right, so great. Let's now lay out a potential plan of action for a company that is in the C-UAS space and looking to get non-dilutive funding. First, if Diana is a fit, and it should be, then move on to today. July 3rd is only a few weeks away, and it's not a lot of runway, but it's doable. Second of all, you want to engage with the Navy SBIR because it's an open topic. So by definition, if you're working in counter UAS, you're relevant. Obviously, Diana versus the Navy SIBR is going to be different because you need to tailor your submission towards the end user, but both are doable. They just demand a little bit of research before putting together the proposal. And third, you need to keep your eyes on the broader landscape. We talked about that CSO from the JITF. That's one example. And remember, that's one example with a limited budget. And when that budget runs out, they're not going to be funding any more companies. So you want to prioritize programs as they come up. And keep in mind that this was a high level urgency to be funding CUAS programs before the FBI disrupted a plot to attack the UFC event at the White House. So this is highly relevant. It's probably going to translate into many more opportunities in the near term future, but also long term. And at Grant Engine, this is exactly what we do. We help companies identify relevant opportunities for their core technologies and to build proposals that are tailored towards the end user and the agency and the sub-agency funding the program. Not every company is going to be relevant, but if you are, this could be a fantastic way to not only raise non-dilutive capital, but also eventually land a DoW customer, or in the case of NATO, maybe an allied customer as well. So thank you everybody for joining. If you want to talk through any of these opportunities or look forward to next or near term or long term opportunities that could be a fit for your company, feel free to reach out by email or book a call directly. My email is josh@grantengine.com, and I'd love to hear from you. Thank you. Have a great day.